Hey everyone, Al Fragnoli, Brandon Gunn joining us today again for League of Leaders. Zach Suddy, unfortunately off this week, but we look forward to having him back on with us next week. Brandon, we've got quite a few topics again. Not as many as we had last week. I think we had 9 or 10 last week, but we do have quite a few. So we're going to start right away, dive into college football. Crazy weekend in college football. So out of the top 12 teams in the rankings this week, 5 of them went down with losses. So a big shakeup in the top 12, top 15 this week for college football. You got number 3 Oregon that lost, number 8 Arkansas went down, number 9 Notre Dame, number 10 Florida, and number 12 Ole Miss. Any of these losses surprise you at all, Brandon? Cincinnati knocked off Notre Dame. Is Cincinnati a top tier team? Are they for real? Do they have a chance now to get into the college football postseason? Alabama and Georgia, those two teams look like they're the clear class of this year's college football season, at least in my eyes. Do you think anybody else can compete with those two teams? So quite a few questions in there, but we'll start it off, Brandon, with a bunch of college football talk.
Yeah. So overall, what I'd say is that the last weekend didn't ultimately surprise me. I think that over the past few years, we've seen that there's just more parity in NCAA college football. I mean, I love it, to be honest with you. In the way that the regular season is set up for college football, one loss can really take you out of it. And so I'm loving the ability, or I guess the opportunity that these teams have as an underdog to come in and knock off, the top players of the world and display themselves. Cincinnati beating Notre Dame didn't surprise me at all. Cincinnati, what Luke Fickell has built there has been nothing short of incredible for a non-Power 5 team. And so it was, me, I love to see upsets. I kind of root for chaos. And I think that was an awesome thing to see in terms of, some of the other losses that occurred. I think you're just also seeing an inability to rank the teams based on a weird season, which was last season. I just think that, you can try to do your best to say what these teams were, but in college football, not only was last year just outside of the ordinary, there were no fans or, just all kinds of different things going on, but then you also turn over a good portion of your roster every year. So I think that, there's always a question mark going into each year. But then with last year just being a non-traditional year, I think that it opened it up for more variability. And once again, I just love to see, the smaller teams come in and have a shot against the bigger teams. What do you think, Al?
Yeah, I have a lot of the same thoughts as you do with this past weekend. I'll touch on Oregon. I think that was my surprise team that lost out of those 5 teams we just mentioned. I didn't think they were going to lose to Stanford. So I'm a little bit surprised there. I'm actually happy they lost, though, as bad as that sounds. I didn't want to see Oregon in the college football playoff. I know they beat Ohio State, but I still didn't think they were a top 4 team. So I'm glad we kind of got them out of the mix right now. Georgia, Alabama, definitely your 2 best teams, hands down. And I don't even think there's anybody close. Whoever ends up in the postseason, Brandon, I really think that if Alabama and Georgia are 1-2 and they don't meet until the championship game, I think whoever they play, the 3rd and 4th seeded teams, I think they're going to blow them out, whoever they are, which is kind of disappointing because you want to see some good quality football. But those 2 teams just look so dominant right now. And, no surprise with Nick Saban, what he's done for a decade plus over there in Alabama. And Georgia, let's talk about that defense. 23, I believe it's 23 total points allowed in 5 games. That's incredible. That is incredible. That is nuts. So that's a team to watch out for, but I think those 2 teams are pretty good. Cincinnati, I believe, does have a shot. If they run the table and they win a lot of their games in convincing fashion, I think you got to give them a lot of respect with what they did last year, what they're doing again this year. I do think they're a quality program. Not going to compete with Georgia or Alabama, but if they run the table, I believe they're deserving of getting into the college football playoff. So, we'll see what happens, but definitely a crazy past weekend in college football. Brandon, we'll jump to our next topic. We'll stick with college football. We'll look ahead to this coming weekend. Probably the biggest game on the docket is going to be number 3 against number 4. Penn State and Iowa matching up. So 2 top Big Ten teams. Who do you think wins this game?
I think Iowa is going to win this game. I just think, one, it's at their home barn. And 2, they've just gone and they've displayed a level of football that to me has kind of come out of nowhere. I feel like the Big Ten, there's always a couple of teams that start off really strong when they're playing, the non-conference early game cupcake schedules. But Iowa's come out and they've shown that they can play a good brand of football. And Penn State, to me, I feel like James Franklin just always has that program boosted in the rankings compared to where they really are. I just feel like they get the benefit of the doubt with the rankings fairly frequently. So I think that Iowa is actually proving it with the eye test a little bit more than them. And then Penn State just, they've got the traditional inflated ranking to start the season.
Brandon, once again, I'm going to agree with you here. James Franklin. Let's talk about James Franklin since you mentioned his name. He is a coach that typically is going to get that Penn State squad playing well. They're going to win your 9, 10, sometimes 11 games a year. They can't seem to get over that hump and get into the college football playoff. I think that he is a horrible in-game coach. I don't think he makes changes until halftime, which you can't do. That's just my thoughts on him. And in a tight matchup with 2 very good football teams, I'm going to give the edge to Kirk Ferentz and the Iowa Hawkeyes. Plus, it is in Iowa. It's not a primetime game, 4 o'clock on Fox, but that crowd is still going to be going pretty nuts. I'm giving the edge to Iowa to win that game, and they should have the inside track into heading into the Big Ten championship game if they do get a win there. So that'll definitely be an exciting game. So we'll see what happens. That is one that I'm looking forward to catching. Brandon, we'll jump ahead to the NFL. You know that I love talking about Tom Brady. So we all know what happened yesterday. Tom Brady, Tampa Bay Buccaneers go into Foxborough, and Tom Brady goes back, plays his old coach and his old team, Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. Your thoughts, Brandon, from last night's matchup?
So actually, I know that Tom Brady versus Bill Belichick was on display, but I think that Mac Jones showed what he could do. I mean, he actually passed for more yards than Tom Brady, threw for a couple touchdowns. But I thought that there was a very telling quote afterwards that Bill Belichick had in the press conference, and that was, "We practiced against Tom Brady every day for his entirety that he was with New England. So he is no stranger to us." And I thought that was very telling on his productivity in the game. I mean, Bill Belichick knows who he's up against. I did think that Tampa Bay would cover the spread. I just thought that on paper they were a better roster, even though their defense just hasn't shown up this year, which is really odd to me. They're returning all of their starters for the most part. So it's really interesting to me how they haven't gelled quite yet. But, I think that it was a good game. I mean, it was kind of it wasn't going to be your high flying, domination by Tom Brady or Bill Belichick, but I think that it was a pretty good game to where it came down to the last drive. Tom Brady drove him down the field for a field goal and, was able to ride off into the sunset. So I think that it was a very good, pupil versus, mentor type game. But then also Mac Jones got to steal the show a little bit. So I thought it was a really good game. What do you think, Al?
Yeah, same. I mean, it was an incredible game, went back and forth. Kudos to Bill Belichick. I don't know. I don't want to say that I doubted him. Maybe I did. I thought that game was going to be a blowout. To your point, I thought the Bucs would cover that 7.5 point spread, and they almost lost the game. So, and a large part of that is to the play and performance of Mac Jones. And then I'm also going to say a big part of that performance is Bill Belichick. He had that defense playing the best game they had all year. To your point, Brandon, Bill Belichick has been around Tom Brady for 20 plus years. They've seen him at practice. They've competed against him with the offense going against the defense. he knew what to do. He was showing one coverage, backing out of it. Their corners were playing incredibly well, tight coverage on Mike Evans. Obviously, not having Rob Gronkowski was an issue for the Bucs. But you got to give a lot of props to Bill Belichick. I think if we learned anything, I think we always have known Tom Brady is probably going to go down as the greatest clutch performer, the greatest quarterback, whatever you want to say in NFL history. Bill Belichick is hands down the greatest coach in NFL history too. So, it'll be interesting to see. Mac Jones is going to continue to grow throughout the season. Patriots 1-3. I don't know if they'll have enough to really start playing a lot better and getting some more wins and get into postseason consideration, but we'll see what happens. I think the sky is the limit for Mac Jones, and he's going to be a good quarterback to fill that void from Tom Brady there. So, but a great matchup, great game. I thought it was going to be a blowout in favor of the Bucs, and that certainly didn't happen. Brandon, we'll stick with the NFL here. We'll talk about Urban Meyer, who we all know very, very well in the great state of Michigan here. The video surfaces of Urban Meyer yesterday at a bar in Florida. I believe it was in Florida and in Jacksonville there. And, he looked like he was having a little bit of fun with having some drinks and some other females around him that were not his wife. Brandon, what do you think?
Man, tough look. I think that, in this day and age, to be a coach of an NFL football team and to put yourself in a situation where that cameras are always rolling. I mean, everybody's got a camcorder in their hands at all times. And, not to say that you don't do it if that's not the case, but what I would say is just you've got to be, as a leader of an NFL franchise, that these players are looking up to you as a mentor and as their leader. And this is, once again, somebody who brought young men out of high school to coach them at college. You've just got to be a better example than what we saw in the video. It's really tough. I feel bad for his wife. His wife's liking, tweets that are at her saying you deserve better than Urban Meyer and all this stuff. And it's just like, man, it makes you wonder, stepping outside of the personal side of it, what I'd say is it makes you wonder about between the struggles that he's having on the field and then this coming to light off of the field. It makes you wonder how long that tenure in Jacksonville is going to be. I think we're already starting to see cracks in his game plans, cracks in his personnel decisions that he's used up to this point. And now you partner it with this, and he probably had the best quote afterwards in his press conference where he said the coach should not be a distraction. Well, Urban, you've just made yourself a distraction. And so I think if we stick to a strictly sports aspect of it, I'm really curious what this does to the Jacksonville locker room and the young team that they have there. What did you think of the situation, Al?
Yeah, my thoughts are pretty similar to yours, Brandon. So, Urban Meyer, and we've talked about this before the season started, how we thought he would do once Jacksonville announced him as their head coach. He's 0-4 to start the season, correct? I believe he's 0-4. He's not going to have a good season. And to your point, how long does he last? It's not going to last very long. And I think we've seen this across almost all of the different major sports in our country. Typically, when a college coach is very successful, they struggle when they try to make the leaps to the professional ranks. And, I don't know if it's because they have an easier time motivating younger people. They struggle, with the locker room and the egos that come with a professional athlete. I'm not sure what it is, but Urban Meyer's had a ton of success in the college ranks. I didn't think he was going to be successful in the NFL. And when you have a video like this that comes out and you're 0-4 to top it off, it's not going to look good. Your players are going to start questioning what you're doing and why you're doing the things you're doing. I think his time in Jacksonville is going to be limited. I don't think they'll fire him mid-season, but I don't think he's going to be back next year. And, when we want to talk about the videos and stuff like this coming out, it doesn't really surprise me to see something like this come out. Urban's really, and we've talked about him in the past too, with what he's done in the college ranks. Very successful college football coach, but he had issues that followed him when he left Florida, and the same thing happened when he left Ohio State. Issues and scandals that seem to follow him when he goes to these big time universities. So, as far as a character individual, I'm not sure, what's internally going on inside of Urban Meyer's mind, but, I love coaching. I love seeing the coaches that really put the athletes and the person first and make them the priority. And I'm not sure that Urban always does that. So that's kind of my take on that. Brandon, we'll jump ahead and start talking baseball. So obviously, again, one of my favorite times of the year. Incredible that this past weekend, we literally went down to the very last day, 162 game season. And there were 4 teams. It didn't happen, but there were 4 teams in the American League that could have potentially ended with the same record, which means we would have had 2 play-in games to determine who would have met in the AL wildcard. That's what I was hoping for. It didn't happen, unfortunately. But what are your thoughts on just this final weekend of baseball?
Well, I think that, overall, for me, it's tough to see the season come to an end before the postseason. I'll start there just because, a lot of these teams go home, and baseball has a very selective process for who makes the postseason. So you get to see, a lot of these teams head out. I do love the competitive nature that it came down to, though. Could you imagine if we had 2 play-in games? That's the dream, right? I think that, you just love to see the people, these teams get in just by the narrowest of margins. And then if they can capitalize on that and then go in and make some noise, I think that's the ideal situation. I was a little excited to see the Giants hold on to their spot atop of their division. But overall, I just thought that this was a great season of baseball. Shohei Ohtani coming out and headlining it. You just had so many storylines from all over the season of baseball. I'm going to be excited for the postseason. I do love the postseason of baseball. I love how the strategies change. I love how, you get to see these pitchers really put on clinics and affect games. So I would say that it was great to see it come down to the wire. I dislike in certain sports when we're coming up on the last couple of weeks of the season, last few weeks of the season, and it's really just scrimmage games because everything's decided. That was not the case in baseball this year, and I was happy about that. Tell me your thoughts, Al. What do you think about the baseball season?
Yeah, so obviously I love this past weekend, and it's such exciting baseball. You know what I love that Major League Baseball does, and they've done for the past few years that I can remember, is on that final day of the regular season, on that Sunday, they end every single game is played at the same time, 3 p.m. Eastern, and I love it because there's just going to be scoreboard watching. That, some teams aren't going to play their bench players for whatever reason. So I absolutely love that the MLB does that. But there was definitely some exciting baseball played this weekend. You mentioned, Brandon, that it's the closing time for a lot of teams. I sat and watched just a little bit. I got to see the tail end, the 8th and 9th inning of the Tigers game yesterday. And it's kind of one of those bittersweet moments, right? So you're excited for postseason to start. Your team is not playing in it. So it's that somber moment where you're like, winter is coming. What's next? Now we got to wait for spring training baseball, which is still months away. So I loved it. I love the final weekend of regular season baseball. It's something I always look forward to. And it still just blows my mind. I know we talked about this last week. To me, it's mind-boggling that you play 162 games and it comes down to the final day for so many teams. It's just crazy. So we're going to stick with baseball, Brandon. We're going to, obviously, we got to talk our predictions. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I know you mentioned your excitement level for the Giants winning the division, knocking off the Dodgers. I believe the Dodgers had won 9 in a row. I did say 2 weeks ago that I thought the Dodgers would continue that streak. I was wrong. I don't like admitting that ever, but I was wrong. Brandon, your thoughts and your predictions for the 2021 Major League Baseball postseason?
Ooh, it's tough to say. I mean, there's so many good teams. I think that's the big thing that I take away is that, you look around the league, and now once we really refine these teams down to just the postseason field, you got to look around and try to figure out, all right, so once we cut the starting pitching down, once we, manipulate these lineups, and it's not quite the everyday grind of Major League Baseball, what is it going to look like? And so to your point, so the Giants did hold off the Dodgers, but I'd be lying if I said the Dodgers were not my favorite to win it. I just think that they're a D team, they're a good team. And it's really tough to see them not, I don't know. They've got my early vote. I think the Houston Astros have a chance as well. But I think that those are my two favorites as of right now. I don't want to see the White Sox win. So although they may, make some noise, I'm not going to be rooting for them. But yeah, I think the Dodgers and the Astros are my early favorites to win it.
Okay. All right, Brandon, my two teams to match up in the World Series is going to be the Tampa Bay Rays and the Los Angeles Dodgers. I have the Dodgers there as well. I have the Rays winning. I believe these two teams met last year, right? I believe the Rays were there. I'm going to take the Rays to get some revenge and win the World Series this year. I think the Dodgers are pretty talented, and I like them to knock off the Cardinals in the NL wildcard game, and that Giants series I think would be fantastic. I have the Braves matching up and knocking off the Brewers. I have the Braves playing the Dodgers in NLCS. And I would love to see the Braves go to the World Series. I've always been a Braves and a Cubs fan from early on as a kid because, being here in Detroit, Tigers weren't very good for a long time as a child in the 90s. And then you have the Braves on TBS and you have the Cubs on WGN. And I just love the tradition of the Chicago Cubs, Wrigley Field, and the Atlanta Braves. Who could ever forget John Smoltz, Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine? What a lineup they had. So I'm pulling for the Braves, but we'll see what they can do. I do think they match up against the Dodgers in the NLCS, but get knocked off by the Dodgers. And then I have the Rays and the Astros meeting in the ALCS. I have the Yankees. I can't wait for this matchup tomorrow. It's just unfortunate that it can't be a 7-game series, but the Yankees and Red Sox, I have the Yankees knocking off the Red Sox in that game. Red Sox offense has been struggling of late, and the Yankees have Garrett Cole on the hill tomorrow. So I think that's going to be a fantastic game, but I'll give the edge to the Yankees with Garrett Cole there. But just going to be a fantastic postseason. So really, really looking forward to it. Can't wait for the AL wildcard game to start and make things happen. So looking forward to a great postseason here for baseball. Brandon, we will jump over to Robin Lehner, Vegas Golden Knights goalie, coming out on a stance in which he said he's played for some former teams and been around some teams that have openly been passing around pills and drugs of some form, when he's on team flights or in the hotel or whatnot, and none of it being prescribed by team doctors or medical professionals at all. So we know that he's a big, you and I talked about it a little bit, he's big on the mental health aspect, as all people should be here in 2021. We know how important it is to focus on your mental health. But him coming out, speaking about these former teams, what are your thoughts about what he's saying? Do you believe it? What do you think's going on right now with why he's coming out, what he's saying here?
Well, I mean, if I take the all sports approach to it to start off, I think it's got to be the worst kept secret in the world that these teams are overprescribing medications. And that goes across all sports. I think that they are giving players the ability to get these medications that can, in some cases, result in dependency. And, that's a scary thing. You read about the percentages of, athletes that post professional career become addicted to different medications, and the numbers are staggering. So in looking at that issue, the medications that he's accused different teams of handing out are the benzodiazepines and Ambien, which are basically sleep aids to cure insomnia and things like that. Now, those are heavy accusations, and I don't think that Robin Leonard makes those statements without some level of truth being there. You were right. He's, a huge proponent of mental health and a huge advocate of mental health. He himself is bipolar and is diagnosed bipolar, and also, I believe, depressed as well, or is, so he's had a few mental diagnoses from his aspect. Now, this is all stemming from a situation where Jack Eichel of the Buffalo Sabres, the team that he is a part of, is not allowing him to get the procedure done to get him back healthy and on the ice. So there's a crossroads that the team and the player are at in terms of what procedure needs to get done. The team is taking a bold stance, and Jack Eichel got his second opinion, as he is allowed to do, as negotiated by the Players Association, and all the specialists that he has seen has recommended a different course of action. So this is just a multi-layered situation that covers a lot of different aspects. So my overall thought on it is good for him, a guy who is still in the league and has millions of dollars to risk, because, I mean, we've all seen people get blackballed out of various leagues. Good for him for taking a stance, and hopefully it creates some wave of change, or at very least, if there is either team or if there are issues going on that need to be brought to light, hopefully they are brought to light. And that's what I've got to say about that. What are your thoughts on it, Al?
Yeah, my thoughts are really similar to yours again, Brandon, with this topic. Wow, we're not disagreeing on much tonight. But listen, I think Robin Leonard is he's coming forward with good intentions here. I think 100% of what he's saying is factual information. We're going to find that out real soon here. And it's a shame, though, the league will probably have to crack down on some of this stuff, but it's really a shame that it takes somebody having the courage to be vocal about something like this, because I'm sure it took him a lot of strength to come out and speak on this, knowing the potential consequences, right? But we talk about leadership and leaders all the time, whether it be a coach or somebody in a high level executive role within the hockey operations department of a team. Somebody for all these teams need to step forward and be a leader, be the leader that they are supposed to be, to oversee people. And doing these things is wrong. I get it that there's a lot of money involved in the wins and losses, but it's not an exception when it comes to people's health and well-being. And you mentioned Jack Eichel. That's another classic example. The Buffalo Sabres, he wants to have a surgery. We talked about this earlier too, Brandon, that he wants to have a surgery and an operation on his neck to correct an issue that he has. The surgery he wants is a surgery that will give him a better quality of life down the road after hockey. And they don't want him to have that surgery. They want him to do the quick fix so that he can be ready to play, because he's such an exceptional athlete. And then when he doesn't want to do that surgery, they say, okay, you're not the captain anymore. right? I mean, that's ridiculous. That's absurd. Shame on the Buffalo Sabres for doing something like that. I hope Jack Eichel goes on to another team. That team lets him have the surgery that is best for him and his health. And I hope he comes back and scores 3 goals every single time he plays the Buffalo Sabres. That's it. That's how I feel. I mean, it is not about the bottom line with these professional sports team. It needs to be about the people, and just do the right thing. So, kudos to Robin Leonard for having the courage to come forward on this, and shame on some of these teams that are just doing the wrong thing. So that's my thoughts on it.
Al, one more thing on that, because I think you made a very good point. I mean, not only is there something to think about for when Jack Eichel comes back and plays against the Buffalo Sabres, but the short-sightedness of the Buffalo Sabres in that situation. What do you think potential free agents are thinking for when the Buffalo Sabres go to sign these players? I mean,
yeah, I mean, you're right. That's a great point, Brandon. I mean, you're going to see people, and you mentioned earlier too, they've got a very young team. So, you have these players and they start seeing what you're doing to one player. That's when everybody starts to go, oh, okay, wait, they don't care about me. They care about the organization. And when that happens, it's professional sports is just like any other company or, corporate America out there. You start caring about the company more than the people, that's when you're going to lose the people. Buffalo Sabres aren't any good as it is. I don't know how far down they can go, but they're not going to have any good players at all moving forward if they keep behaving like this. And to your point, free agents, nobody's going to want to come and play in Buffalo. So it'll be interesting to see what comes about with this story and the things that continue to come out. So Brandon, that wraps it up for tonight and Hot Topic Tuesday. And again, second straight week with a ton of discussion here on some quality topics in the sports world. So we want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to us. We look forward to having Zach again back next week. And we want to encourage you to listen to our leadership guests when we have them on Sunday. So thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed our conversation.